WTVQ.
Welcome back to Fighting Back. I'm Dan Travis. Okay, just before the break, we were talking about social acceptability and how it can influence huge things like slavery and the end of slavery in the United States had we not had a freedom-hating president, Abraham Lincoln. And I was talking about gun laws. The attitude towards guns in this country is all about social pressure. That's all it is. Because the facts don't support gun control. The facts support the exact opposite of gun control. And yet, great big idiots like Michael Bloomberg are out there screaming how we need more gun control. He cites a gun show down in Nashville, Tennessee. 250 gun dealers, 10,000 people at the show. And he said, well, they were able to buy a bunch of guns. Yeah, of course they were. It's a gun show, dope. I would hope you were able to buy a bunch of guns. The problem is that Michael Bloomberg isn't pointing out any problem with the law. He's pointing out a problem with liberty. See, the guns they bought, they didn't buy from gun dealers at the show. They bought from patrons of the show. Now, if you've never been to a gun show, maybe you don't know this, but some of the bigger gun shows, you walk around and there'll be a guy carrying a rifle on his back. He's not a dealer, but he does have this particular rifle that he would like to sell at the gun show. So what does he do? He checks the gun at the door. They make the gun safe, make sure that he can't fire it. And then he's allowed to walk around with it. And he slings it over his back and usually ties a flag to the top of it that says, for sale. So people walking around will notice, hey, this guy over here has got this really nice rifle that I've been looking for. And look, it's a pretty good price. I think I'll buy it. Well, but he's a private citizen. He's not bound by the rules of the ATF with regard to registering transactions and background checks and things like that. Thank God he's not. The ATF is the epitome of government oppression. The ATF and the IRS, the two of them. Two groups of people that if their buildings burned down and they were all killed, I really wouldn't feel too damn bad about. Ignorance is no excuse. Isn't that what they tell us when we break the law? Well, doesn't the same go for them? They're breaking the Constitution. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. IRS, ATF. Ignorance is no excuse. We're going to have a big problem here if a revolution happens in this country. Because the citizens, I think, are more capable of making a moral decision when they pull the trigger. Does this person I'm about to shoot have a family? Maybe they do. Maybe they have a wife. Maybe they have kids. Maybe he's a good guy, just doing a bad job. I don't know. Do I shoot him? You know what? They're not going to ask those questions when they've got us in the crosshairs. They're going to do their job. Why are they going to do their job? Because that's how their kids eat. For the same reason we all go to work every day and we do our jobs. Remember this. Any federal police officer is a criminal. Why is he a criminal? Because the United States Constitution grants no power, no police power to the federal government. So if you are a federal agent, find me the authority on which you operate and prove to me that it's constitutional. There's only talk of one law enforcement person in the entire federal government. That is the President of the United States. He is the Commander-in-Chief. That's why they call it the executive branch. He executes the laws. The court rules on the laws. The legislature writes the laws. The President executes the laws. There are no police powers in our founding documents. federal government was never intended to have a police department. There's a reason for that. Because when the people responsible for stepping on your neck are 300 miles away, there's not a whole lot anybody can do about it. It's the same reason we have the big powers are vested in our local governments. Policing the populace is a huge responsibility. Huge. And it should only be handled at the local level. I think that once you even get to state police, you're probably a little too big. Although they do have authority to operate, so you cannot take that away from them. My personal opinion is that law enforcement should be no bigger than county. Because we still have some real control over those elections. When we don't like what the county police do, we throw out the sheriff. And we're not bound by the 8 million idiots in New York City who want to take away our guns. That's the problem with state control.
I think what they mean by gun control is not necessarily the guy who's selling the gun. I think he has more than enough rights to sell the gun. The problem is the person who's buying it. We don't know him. That's why we need those I thought we needed those background checks and things.
Well, why do we need to know him? What is a gun? Is a gun more dangerous than a knife? If I want you dead, do you think that I'm still going to manage to kill you if I don't own a gun? Of course I am. Of course I am. If I wanted somebody dead, I would do it with a butter knife or spoon. It does not matter. It is the will of the individual that makes them a murderer, that makes them dangerous. It is not the tool which they hold. And that's all a gun is. A gun is a tool. A gun is not a weapon until it is used against another person to cause injury or harm.
I felt like guns just made it easier, and that's why they have to enforce it. Like, okay, we can't just sell a gun to anybody. So, we need a little bit of protection.
Guns certainly make it easier.
But
guns certainly make it easier to kill people. That's why our military has them. But you know what? It's a lot easier to kill somebody with a really sharp knife than it is for me to kill them with this soda bottle. Should I have to register my knives? Right. And this is the problem. I get a lot of heat for this. I operate on black and white constantly. It's either right or it's wrong. There is no gray area with me. Either I have the freedom and the liberty and the right to own firearms, or I do not. And if I don't, well, you're going to have a hell of a fight on your hands if you think that. Because I believe, as the founders did, that the Second Amendment is not granted by the government. It's granted by God himself. That's why I believe that the Bill of Rights apply to all human beings on the face of the earth, not just American citizens. If there are rights endowed by our Creator, then it's the only logic that makes sense. How could it be anything else? And this is the same reason why I don't think that the right to vote in the United States is a right. Because if it was truly a right, then everybody would be able to vote. Foreigners included. Unless we break down these rights from maybe it's not a human right, that particular action is an American right. But the right to own a firearm is so closely tied to the right to self-preservation that it can never be taken away from the American people. Never. We have to be willing to lay down our lives if they try and take that away from us. Because if we don't put up a fight then, we'll certainly lay down our lives at some point. That's why they want the guns. Governments thrive on control. It's a hell of a lot easier to control a group of people when they're not holding guns.
Well, I just had to interject for a second because Gandhi did it. I know it's a little weird for me to say that, but Gandhi did it without raising a hand. I mean, from Gandhi to Malcolm X, it's different means, but to the same end.
You cited two sources throughout world history who were the exception to the rule. And the question is, Gandhi was only allowed to live because nobody decided to shoot him. But that does it for us today. We'll talk a little more about that stuff next week. You've been listening to Fighting